Emmett says he's excited for this one, and he should be. This is the one right here.
This is the big one. Yeah.
If you're not here now and you're like watching some stupid shit like Donald Trump speech, whatever, okay. I don't know what to say to you. But I'm sorry, I guess, just for your life. But Emmett understands, and yeah, let's go, man. So yeah, I believe Trump is taking the stage during this live stream. I think that's right. But hey, whatever. You've already seen that ear bandage. That's the main thing. You want it, right? No one like cares about what he's going to say or the moment or any of that stuff. It's not like it's historic or anything. You've seen what the ear bandage looks like. You know he's got it. It's like, okay, big whoop. We've even seen him in the crowd at the RNC, not smiling, not clapping, not standing up, looking very sad. Maybe because he lost a piece of his ear, or maybe because he doesn't really want to be president. I don't know. But yeah, this is the thing everyone should be watching. Michael Weimer, where were you? Where were you?
I was in Bedford, Indiana, playing a blues gig in what I believe is an indoor smoking bar, an illegal indoor smoking bar. I'm pretty sure the law in Indiana only allows smoking inside cigar lounges. So a relic of the past we were in, and deep in the heart of Trump country.
Yeah.
And my phone was blowing up, but deep in the heart of Trump country, it seemed like nobody cared. It seemed like people were there to drink and get laid, and they were more interested in the free T-shirts from the bar than they were with whatever was happening with politics. And Owen Benjamin made this observation. He said, "Hey, I'm in a Walmart in Idaho, and nobody's freaking out that their hero, their legendary president, got assassination attempted." This was a very weird and surreal moment where it seems like the American people are just numb. And they've checked out of politics entirely at this point.
Oh, delicious. Just shoot that into my veins, man. I want to hear more of that. I didn't know about this, that the Heartland didn't give a shit. That even Trump country didn't care. But this, I'm being very serious here. This is exactly what we need politically, always, and we should always be advocating for. I have always advocated for that politics. Yeah, the politics of indifference. That's a good one. And it sure as hell beats the politics of a cult of personality, which we now have achieved the pinnacle of in American political culture for the first time, maybe since Franklin Roosevelt. Because of this thing, there already was a substantial cult of personality around Donald before that fateful day. But now, I believe I have seen multiple religious ceremonies conducted by MAGA faithful worshiping, quite literally, Donald J. Trump because he has now proven himself to them. Is this an overstatement at this point? The second coming? He's the second coming of George Washington for these people at this point. George Washington with a little Jesus inflection. I mean, it's taken off to new levels where I'm actually, for the first time, concerned about this cult of personality. Because that is the part of MAGA, that is the part of the Trump phenomenon that very well certainly is smack dab in the middle of the definition of fascism. Now, I don't think it's fascist overall. I don't think Trump's a fascist. I don't think the MAGA platform is fascist overall. But it has elements, most certainly, that are fascist. And that is the biggest one. The cult of personality, as we all know, was built powerfully around Mussolini and Hitler and Franco. Every fascist leader we care to name who was actually a fascist had just that, the strongman that everybody looked up to. And by the way, all you MAGA men praising masculinity, you're a bunch of cucks, guys. You're look at what you're doing. You're genuflecting to another man. And I mean that. There's a real subservience going on in the MAGA movement. And they're actually proving themselves to be a bunch of betas because, hello, they just took a shot at your guy. And within an inch of killing him. Obama was certainly a cult of personality. That was the liberal version of it. Although I would say it was, yes, absolutely. In fact, I talked quite a lot about it at the time in 2008 and afterward. I mean, it was disgusting. But there was something silly and dumb and feckless about the Obama cult of personality because it was a bunch of liberals on the coasts who
the Trump cult of personality makes sense because Trump is a great man of history and has been given the providence of God to rule over America in its decline.
That's right. The context of the decline, the narrative that they have, which is also basically true, the decline of the American empire, right? It's super millenarian. It's very biblical. And he's the coming, maybe the second coming, or maybe he's just coming all over their faces, because that's actually what's going on right now. Trump can do whatever he wants to anybody who feels that way about him. Everybody, the last thing you want to do, wherever you live, wherever you are, whatever year you're living in, whoever your leader is, the last thing you want to do is merge your identity with the head of state. Guys, if you're wearing the head of state's face on your t-shirt, don't you think he can take advantage of you? Don't you think he can get away with things? You won't complain if he, let's say, sticks one of your relatives in prison for political speech. Or executes your uncle for selling weed, which Trump and a lot of MAGA people have suggested they'd like to do, for instance. Whatever it is. Or send your son off to die in a war against Iran, which he also seems open to considering, given all the people he's appointed in his cabinet over the years in foreign policy. John Bolton, hello. Pompeo, hello. Those guys will go to war with Iran tonight if given the chance. So what if Trump does that and you've been worshiping and praising hallelujah at that man's feet for now 6 years, and now, since this clear evidence that he's a supernatural entity who has graced the earth with his presence, now you are starting to think he really is a spiritual entity. That's how you're and am I exaggerating how people in the Trump world, the MAGA world, are thinking about the man these days? Am I exaggerating, anybody? And this is a guy, hello here, who has been anti-Trump since 2015, meaning I've been almost solely critical of the anti-Trump movement, and I've had nothing but generally positive things to say about Trump and the Trump movement. But now it's very clear to me, and it's been growing even since the assassination attempt, but now, look out. That guy can fuck you 6 ways from Sunday, as Schumer said, and you won't even notice it because you love him so much. I doubt there's a lot of MAGA people watching this show, in part because their guy is speaking right now, and in part because this is not a MAGA show. But if you can get the word out, please, everybody, please get the word out, because I care about the MAGA people. I like them. I'm sympathetic to them. I strongly dislike some of their positions and ideas and their temperament at times, but I'm very sympathetic to them. They've been more screwed over than any political movement in, I was going to say, American history. I mean, the Communist Party certainly had more prosecutions, but then again, they were engaged in active espionage and sabotage against the U.S. government, unlike the MAGA. I mean, worse than the Panthers, I think. The Klan would be the only, I'd say the Klan, interestingly, is the only political movement in American history that's had harsher repression from the government against it than the MAGA movement. So I'm very sympathetic to them. I think J6, we've talked about this many times, is a disgusting violation of everything. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, my sense of ethics, the kind of country I want to live in. So I ain't no anti-Trump freak. I don't suffer from TDS. I am saying to all of them and I've had many, many MAGA people on my show, to promote what they were saying, by the way, not challenging them. And I remain friendly with them, and it's all good. But man, you got to watch out for this. And it's not even Trump's fault, really. It's not like sure, he's a monumental egotist, But that's okay. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But I don't think he's necessarily constructing the cult of personality himself deliberately. But, you know, nonetheless, it's happening, and he should say things about it. But I just say to everybody on the MAGA side, man, I am with you on the deep state. I am with you on the Democratic Party. I am with you on so many things, the forever wars. And I'm even willing to listen about immigration. But you guys got to chill now that you think your homeboy is Moses and Jesus and George Washington rolled into one. Because he can fuck you, as I said, any which way he wants to. And you'll simply be talking about how wonderful your great leader is. And it really is great leader kind of stuff at this point. There's a totalitarian element to that culture at Trump rallies and among the MAGA faithful, you know. And again, I say this with love, and I mean that. But this is to me the thing that no one's talking about since the assassination. The danger, that's to me the biggest danger arising from this. And he's also most likely going to be president. So he is going to have the power of the head of state of the most powerful nation state in the history of the world, which means he can do anything he wants to any of us at any time. So why don't we doesn't mean you have to be anti-Trump. Just maintain a critical distance. That's it. Like with every other politician. If you don't do that, all they're going to do is you're going to wake up one morning and World War II will have started. I mean, that's what happened in the 30s. That's what happened in Vietnam. That's all the time. Every bad thing. Everything was cool. That's what happened with the pandemic. Who was president? Donald Trump. And the whole MAGA faithful were like, this is cool. The economy is great. There's no rioting in the streets. This is awesome. Next thing you know, he is signing the order for lockdowns. And he is launching Operation Warp Speed. And he is not mandating, but pushing hard the vaccine against all of us. I mean, if we had on the right, and I mean me, but like if the right had more critical distance, and I mean emotionally, psychologically from Trump, there's a damn good chance none of that would have happened, guys. Because you would have been, instead of saying, Trump's signing an order for lockdowns. Oh, that's interesting. You would be marching in the streets and freaking out the way that you did later. And he would have seen, without these people, Trump himself, he ain't stupid. He would have seen, without my base, if my base hates me, I got nothing in this country, right? Because the entire establishment wants to kill me, obviously. I have no support anywhere except my base. That's Trump. He's clear. So if his base had maintained some critical distance from him, psychologically and emotionally, and had protested against what he did, not to mention sending weapons to Ukraine before Biden was even in office. Many things he did that were completely contrary to the MAGA ideology, the MAGA sensibilities, the MAGA movement. He was quite corrupt in many ways in terms of being ideologically corrupt. You all got him into office with him promising various things. By the way, he didn't even deliver on the stuff I don't like. Where's your wall? And again, if you had been protesting him vigorously the way that you protest Biden and company, there's a damn good chance the policies that came out of the Trump administration would have been much different and much better from a MAGA perspective. So now that's shot to hell. Like when he's president, oh my goodness gracious. I mean, the culture around him on the right, already Lindsey Graham is, filleting him. Like that's, I think he was first seen in public with Lindsey Graham after he got shot. So that means the whole establishment's now bending. Marco Rubio filleted him on stage on the first or second night of the convention. I'm watching it the whole time. I'm thinking, didn't Trump call you little Marco Rubio? Multiple times. It's so pathetic. These guys talk about alpha masculinity, conservatives, the right wing, all the time. I'm like, are you kidding me? You guys are like giving Trump the reach around, or he's giving you the reach around or something. Maybe it's going both ways. I don't know, but you are subservient to this guy. It is not a good look for a man. I'm trying to communicate to them in language they understand. Oh, let me try another way. It's not what white people do. Okay. So white people, this might get through to your fucking heads. White people don't act like that. White men, you guys know this, right? They're the great leaders, you know, the great leaders, like the ones you revere all the time. Yeah, they don't like worship their leaders. Is that what George Washington did? Huh? No. Is that what Donald Trump ever did? No. That's to his great credit. Maybe you could say he does it to the military. He kind of has that kind of homoerotic relationship with the military brass. That's why he hired all those Marine generals to run his foreign policy in his first few years. But can we please have some masculine pride, MAGA people? Yeah, he got shot in the ear. So what? I mean, so what? He's not your dad. Is he? Is he your dad? If he's your dad, then you should feel this way about him. But he's not your dad. Is he your brother? No. He's certainly not your equal. You certainly see him as superior to you, don't you? It's pathetic. This is why the MAGA movement, as I've said all along, is not a real revolutionary movement. Not at all. They're not at all. They've never had any serious revolutionary commitment or courage, for that matter. Again, look at January 6th and what actually happened on January 6th. That's the joke of the whole thing, is that the Democrats go on and on about how it was an insurrection. I look at it, I'm like, that's LARPing as a rebel by these idiots who are the people who go to Trump rallies.
Well, I don't see MAGA as a revolutionary movement. I see it as sort of a hyper-patriotic last ditch to affirm the institutions of America and strengthen them while they're in rapid decline. I think they want to strengthen the military as it's being wokeified and as it's being stretched out into wars that make no sense. I think they want to, strengthen the presidency, strengthen all of your conventional institutions. That's why they criticize DEI hiring practices so much, because they want the most competent people to be our actual leaders. And it's nationalism. It's like pride and belief in the system, which is why January 6th, they respected the rope boundaries. Like, they respected most of the boundaries and didn't actually plan to overthrow anything. They were just demonstrating and doing their part as citizens, protesting an election that they didn't think was fortified and strong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So are you defending them?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
no, that's good. I'm just being clear here. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Also, if you think about it, this moment, like, take the personality of Trump out of it necessarily, which is impossible to do, but you had a string of bullets that were inches away from a former president's head, that were the front runner for the opposition party in an election, and were Trump to get his head blown off like the deep state wanted to have happen that day, America would have been thrust into chaos, and we might have Nikki Haley come out as the nominee in the RNC this week, and we might have a total deep state martial law takeover of our institutions coming out of it.
Okay, so right there, right. I think that's actually, I heard talk like that over the last week, and that's when I started to think about the problem of the cult of personality. Because, again, I see the MAGA movement is made up of a bunch of obsequious LARPers, not of actual rebels. I mean, rebels, sure, but not revolutionaries. They're not serious as revolutionaries. And again, like this, in America, we don't even know what that looks like. In most other countries, everyone knows what I'm talking about. Like, real revolutionaries, they've been all over other countries, just not around here in a long, long time. I mean, there's been little sprinkles of them, and I've lived among them, little. If the bullet had actually, or if he hadn't turned his head, however the story goes, and it was 2 inches to the right, and his brain was blown out.
Yeah.
On on fucking yikes, national television. Wow, that video would have sucked to see.
Also, curiously, I'm not sure if this is
Yeah.
confirmed, but I think this was the only Trump rally all year that CNN was broadcasting live. So it would have been broadcasted live on national television. Your glorious leader getting his head blown off. Complete demoralization.
So you said that there would have been chaos and martial law.
Yeah, I think
because of the chaos.
Yeah, I mean, I think if the deep state pulled off that assassination, the deep state could pull off a string of false flag terrorist attacks and blame it on MAGA domestic terrorists, or maybe a real retaliation might have happened, and there would have been all this excuse to crack down on violence, and more importantly, the nominee at the Republican nominee would have probably been Nikki Haley. She had the most delegates out of the primary process, so you have a total insider.
Yeah. So for 6 years now, what has the Democratic Party and the deep state not tried to do to Donald Trump?
Well, exactly. This is an escalation in the tactics. Yeah, totally.
Right.
Yeah.
No. But it's just the latest. But my God, since literally day one of his presidency, before, I mean, the beginning of the campaign, I mean, Hillary's talking about the deplorables.
Yeah.
Publicly and on and on and on. I mean, and we know this. We know the litany of what Russia. I mean, just endless, nonstop. I'll never. I mean,
they framed him as a foreign asset. Like they framed him as a foreign terroristic adversarial asset. Yeah.
Yeah. I recommend everybody go. I like to dip back into it just for fun every once in a while. Everyone go look back at his very first press conference when he was president. First day, I think, of his presidency, he gives a press conference. It's the most amazing thing I think I've ever seen in American political history. It is, for sure. No. So the media, the legal system, everybody has been after Trump, and then locking up his people and trying to lock him up. And what exactly has the MAGA movement done in response? January 6th is the best you got. And again, I happen to see January 6th as largely a joke. They didn't bring a single gun, and we're supposed to consider it a serious insurrection, but there was no gun found. What's that about? No, obviously it's a joke. No, they're a joke. They don't take this seriously. They've protested the most grotesque violations of the Constitution I have seen in my lifetime against them, but I'm on their side because of that, because I like the Bill of Rights. I like living in, under the what's it called? Rule of law. I like that. It's a social construct, but I like it. And obviously the Democrats have trashed all of that more profoundly than, again, anything I've seen in my lifetime. I think there have been certainly worse examples in American history prior to my lifetime, but in the last 58 years, no. This is the worst I've seen. It's just, and it's very scary. It's also affected me indirectly, but it could, and it will, and it has, it will affect all of us profoundly, because they allowed these precedents to happen, these incredible abrogations of civil rights to take down Trump. And the MAGA movement, what I'm saying, hasn't done a goddamn thing. Look, the left, if this had been done to the left, imagine if Trump were Bernie Sanders. Bernie and Trump were flipped in their successes. Bernie had become president and had this like very loud, powerful movement, which he could have had. And the deep state and the Republican Party had done to him what the Dems are doing to Trump. Imagine what the left would have done. My God. I mean, and Jesus, I mean, just the marches, the rallies, the protests, the screaming, the yelling, the boycotts, the takeovers, the walk-ins, the sit-downs, the walkouts, the strikes. It would have been a mass, and it would have taken place in the courts too, because the left controls much of the judiciary, and they have all the best lawyers. So they would have had incredible lawsuits being filed against the Republican Party, and incredible lawsuits filed against the deep state and the federal government. I mean, it would have been a massive, coordinated movement, probably with a violent armed wing to it. There probably almost certainly would have emerged some kind of left-wing militia or something, some armed movement, some Black Panther kind of movement, but it would have been like, and it would have had some relationship, maybe not formal, but it would have existed with the Bernie Sanders movement for sure. And we would have known that, like between like the IRA and the Sinn Féin, it would have been something like that. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying the left would have conducted, mass terrorist campaigns against civilians, but there would have been some violence. The left would have used, is anyone surprised, to think that? Of course. We saw in 2020, the left likes violence. And I know this because, again, I lived among them and I was one. We liked violence. The left likes it. So anyway, none of that. MAGA's done none of that. And they're the ones with all the guns. Well, we're supposed to be scared of these people.
No, they believe in the system. They believe that they can elect Trump and he can reform America. They believe in actual reform through the democratic process.
Right. Precisely. This is why they wear what? American flags. Okay. Again, mistake number 2. Merging your identity with the nation state. Not a good idea if you want to be free. All you're doing is fooling yourself. The flag is just a veil. You can't see through it. So they can screw you and you're still like, I'm an American. I love America while my son's being sent off to war. This happens all the time. I'm American. Love USA, USA. Here, take my taxes. Okay. It's much easier to do things against you, against the citizenry, when their personalities are merged with the nation state. This should not be a surprise to anybody. That also is the root or the essence of fascism. And communism, when it works, that's what communism and fascism rely on, is that every individual citizen thinks of the nation state as them. It's one and the same. And they will fight and die for it, like they would fight and die for themselves. And so once you have the citizenry fully merged with the nation state, again, how difficult is it to draft them into the army? How difficult is it to expropriate their wealth? All sorts of things. How difficult is it to limit their rights to speech? Are they going to complain? How loudly will they complain when we take away their civil rights? It's very difficult to complain very loudly when the state is taking away your rights when you're wearing its flag on your face. So this is why I have preached always my politics, my ideology, which I have dubbed perpetual oppositionalism. It doesn't mean being belligerent. It doesn't mean always fighting. In fact, I'd say fight as little as you can. But it means always keeping, as I said, a critical distance from power, and especially the state. Just never think of it as them, as you. During the Olympics, I allow myself, I don't say us or we, but I do generally root for the USA athletes. Okay. So, in sports, I think it's okay. That should be the extent of anybody's nationalism, is they can root for the country's teams in international sporting events. That's okay. It goes beyond that. All you're doing, again, is inviting repression. You're inviting repression of yourself. Patriotism is simply self-imposed shackles. And by the way, this kind of nationalist patriotism, it's brand new in world history. It's about 200 years old, maybe 300 at most. People weren't marching around with national flags on their backs until basically Napoleon, and also just the whole psychological aspect of it, of the nation state, which was the most important aspect. That's a 19th century phenomenon. So this is not like people think, oh my God, it's these ancient traditions you're challenging. Are you kidding me? This is like nationalism is like last minute. It's brand new. It's about the same age as Israel. Like another thing, it's like, oh my God, Israel, the land of the Jews, millennia. No. It's like not much older than me, actually. It's ridiculously young, and let's not be ridiculous about it. So anyway, that's my contrarian take on Trump almost getting his head blown off. But I mean, I've met much else to say. I mean, we can talk about the conventional takes that people have, which are important and useful and not wrong. I mean, Jesus, I mean, just let's take it all the way down to the like it's not mundane, but the second by second. I mean, my very, very first thought when I saw the video was, oh my God, those Secret Service guys really are about to take a bullet. Like, and they're throwing their bodies on him, like knowing that they could very easily at any second take a bullet. I mean, I've known this, of course, that's what the Secret Service does. And I've seen it, you know, I saw them do it for Reagan, but still it was just, and it was a lot of them, however many there were, like 8 or 10 of them, not to mention the state police troopers with the full body armor who, like, the guy he just like walks right in front of where the bullet came from, wide open to a shot. I mean, I hate cops and I hate the federal government of the United States and all of it. But I just thought that was pretty stunning to see that there are people. Now the women involved, maybe not quite as much, not quite as they were. Oh, that's the next thing to say. I was just amazed at the courage, even though, again, for not the greatest cause necessarily, but like it's I was really stunned by that, and it's just nice to see that. And I've commented on this before on the show, like when I see acts of especially masculine courage, it's very moving. And maybe because I just don't see much of that anymore, outside of sports, you know, it's kind of pathetic. But yeah, so that's number one. And then the whole DEI angle. I'd love to get your take on that. Would you prefer an all female service detail, Secret Service detail, or all male? I mean,
well, before that, you're talking about acts of male male heroicism or male bravery. Did you feel any inspiration from Donald Trump getting back up, punching his fist? Like before the coast was clear, the resolve that he showed, like assuring the crowd that he was okay, you know, that instead of cowering in fear and crawling off, that he stood up and was resolve about it and chanted fight, you know, all that.
Completely stunning. And it was such a phenomenal performance by him that, and I'd never have believed this, and I don't believe this, and I don't think I ever will believe this, but it was such a phenomenal, perfect performance that, you know, of course, in the back of my head, I'm thinking this had to be staged at least somewhat. Now, I will say this, I do think it was staged in a certain aspect.
Well, okay.
Trump, go ahead.
Well, Donald Trump is a member of the WWE Hall of Fame. You have to understand, it's the number one thing you have to understand about Donald Trump. The first thing he understands is television and appearances and how things are going to look. He has the best instincts, period, when it comes to how a picture is to be framed or how things are going to come across on television. He is a savant at that. So when people say it looks staged, he's a genius when it comes to television. Yeah.
And that's the reason he was president.
Yeah.
That's the reason there's a MAGA movement. That's the reason anyone cares about Donald Trump as a politician, is that he was a TV star. Again, the left and liberals especially forget that all the time. That's the main reason the guy's popular. That's the main reason people like him. Yes, he's primarily a TV performer and has been for decades. I mean, even before he was had a formal show, like when I lived in New York in the 90s, Donald Trump was in the media all the time, just being Donald Trump and doing his thing. So yes, he's a performer, has been a television performer, and he understands drama. He also understands comedy. But so that's one reason it was in a sense staged. But I am 100% sure that he has rehearsed that moment in his head many, many times. Because how many rallies has he spoken at? How many times has he been outdoors in public where someone could take a shot at him? How many, knowing that half the country thinks he's Hitler, how many times has Donald Trump thought, oh, someone might take a shot at me? Which again, speaks to his courage.
Yeah.
Which again, though, I'm not sure that's a virtue, guys. Again, it's courageous, but would you want your son to have that? Your husband? Would you want your dad to have that courage, that kind of courage? No. I mean, to take a bullet for what exactly? To be president? So again, there's like people need to think about their valuations here, their moral valuations here. And it's not to say anything negative about Trump, but it's just to say, are we sure we want to glorify him and what this represents? That's all.
Real quick, 25. What is this Norwegian currency again? Yeah, same instincts as a certain Austrian. Said in jest.
We are huge in Oslo, man.
Yeah,
the Norwegians love us. No, it's true. Unregistered has had a pretty significant Scandinavian audience since the beginning. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but it's interesting. Yeah, I've had a lot of Swedes and Norwegians watch my stuff. But anyway, so yeah, he's undoubtedly rehearsed the moment in his head. He wasn't completely unprepared for it, right? We know this. Not to mention the fact, as you said, he's a performer. So he must have in his head thought, what will I do when that happens? And it is, I'm sure it was a when instead of an if. I mean, I can't believe Trump spoke like that outdoors so many times. I mean, it's just amazing knowing that, again, that half the country thinks he's Hitler. So,
but I see bravery as a virtue. I see courage as a virtue. I believe in things like virtue.
I know. I guess I want to think through it though. I mean, do we really? It's the exact same courage as the soldier going off to war, right? And so, but now, if you're really under threat, sure, of course. If your country or your personhood is actually under threat, then the courage to defend oneself, one's place, makes sense to me. That as a virtue, of course. But again, if it's for some other cause, like a country, like a nation state, generally, or some political movement, or becoming president, if it's for a cause like that, is that the courage you would want in people you love? Right?
Yeah. High aspirations of doing the right thing. Yeah, for sure. All
right.
When Ron Paul was running for president, there was concerns that his plane would get shot down. I think any outside reformer of Washington, D.C. is going to put themselves in the crosshair if they are actually going to reform the system for the better. And I think anybody who is actually going to change America for the better needs that level of courage and needs to understand what they're up against. Yeah.
Okay. Let me refine my point. I think it is, I wouldn't call it a virtue, but I think it's a valuable thing, or I value that quality in statesmen, people with political power. I'd prefer the heads of state to have that quality than to not.
Well,
I suppose.
Contrast Trump sticking his fist up after getting shot in the ear.
Yeah.
With the congressmen cowering under their desks during January 6th when there was a crowd outside.
Then again, I mean, a physically brave president, isn't he more likely to send us into war?
Yeah, a brave person who you're against. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it can be used effectively for evil. Yeah.
I'm just saying he's less afraid of dying. I'm very afraid of dying. I want more people to be afraid of dying in Congress and the White House. And I'm also afraid of killing people, and I'd like that fear also instilled. But yeah, Donald Trump doesn't have any of that shit. He's quite cold-blooded. His daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, Eric's wife, and I have things to say about her, but she's up there again, just gushing praise onto Trump as he's sitting there watching it. It's like first night, I think, of the convention, and and I was thinking, this guy's different because most fathers-in-law today would do some kind of gesture, like she was just gushing over him, right, in her speech, and he's sitting there and most fathers would do some kind of gesture. They put their hands over their heart, or go like this, or blow a kiss, or say thank you, mouth the words thank you or something. Homeboy was just sitting there, just grinning at her.
You're correct. Go on. Yeah.
Exactly. And the look was like, yeah, I know. He's different. He's definitely different. And so that's a stoicism for sure. I mean, the guy is tougher than anybody. It's true. I mean, he can take clearly more abuse than anybody in the world. I mean, no one has suffered what Donald Trump has suffered for the last 6 years. No one. And now it includes, a bullet piercing his flesh. So, but again, what does that mean? Is that actually what we want in a president? Now, I know I don't want that in people I care about. Like, right? I wouldn't want you to get your head blown off because you want to run for president. I wouldn't want my son to do that. I wouldn't want good people I care about to do that. I don't think. I want people who just want to be politicians to be like that. Maybe. I'm not even sure. Again, everybody, I'm just pointing out some possible complications here. Some nuances in the way we're thinking about this.
Well, I mean, yeah, people are saying if not Trump, then who? Like you need fighters, I think is the aesthetic.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, so I concede that there will have to be, well, there will be, whether I like it or not, there will be a government and there will be people staffing it for sure. And so the question is, and this is not moral. Well, this is just strategic. What kind of people do you want in the government? Do you want them to be cowards who are afraid of their shadows? Are they less likely to send us to war and do bad things, or more likely? I don't know. It could go either way. Trump, if he's just like a guy made of steel, which he kind of is at this point, is that actually more or less dangerous as a head of state, as a commander in chief? So,
I do. This fundamental truth gets perverted and used the wrong way, but there is such thing as the enemy. There is such thing as evil. There is such thing as bad people who want to do bad things and who want to seize power and want to cause death and destruction. Like there is such a thing against that, and good people have to oppose it. And in order to do that, you're going to have to be brave.
Hang on now. When you use moral terms like good and evil, or evil, that's the issue. Those are absolute universalistic terms, right? So do you mean if evil is being perpetrated anywhere in the world, you would valorize a person who would rise up and go and fight it?
Yeah. If somebody, yes.
Like, okay. So like, for instance, on say, March or April of 2003, they sign up for the army to go fight the evil that's being perpetrated in the sands of Iraq. That would have been a good thing to you?
I mean, that's how it gets used to get well-meaning young men who want purpose in their life to sign up to do the wrong thing as a plan for somebody else.
Okay. So that's the thing, though. To me, that's exactly why I avoid the universalistic, moralistic language and claims. So, because now, if Saddam Hussein lived in Modesto, California, right over the hill here, and actually did have biological weapons, I would certainly grab a gun and fight, and I might even encourage my son and you to come help us. So again, but that's not a moral. So that's not me rising up against evil. That's not me fighting evil. It's not.
I know it's self-preservation. It's
there. Yeah. So that's actual. So that, and I don't even think it's a virtue. I just think it's smart. It's just my preference. I certainly have no argument against it. I mean, I think it's completely understandable, and I would generally support people doing that, and it just makes sense. Now, again, if it's evil that we are somehow morally obligated to fight, then that means you and I shouldn't be doing this right now, right? I mean, we should be out there in the jungles somewhere saving children with guns on our back.
Not necessarily. I mean, I could concede that we are just cowards sitting in front of a screen and talking and taking the coward's way out. Sure, I could potentially concede that, but I don't. I think it's broader than that. I think an example of heroism would be like Kyle Rittenhouse. He wasn't acting in his own personal interest necessarily. He crossed the sacred boundary of state lines to protect a community that was near and dear to him, that was being besieged by chaotic and evil forces. And
I would not want my son to do that.
Yeah, but
I totally supported Kyle Rittenhouse, 100%. Still do.
You want men like that in your society, though, who will rise up and do the right thing.
Well, isn't that tricky?
Yeah.
Now we sound like you sound like a neocon, basically, right? It's like, oh, Bill Kristol sitting in your Manhattan apartment. Oh, we should go to another war out over there, and we should send the whole army too. And I'll be here in my studio cheering you on.
Yeah,
that's the neocon. They're all chicken hawks. None of them ever served in any military.
Yeah,
not even the IDF. Disgusting. It's very strange. And then I have friends, who have their own podcasts who are pro-war, pro-US war since Iraq. But of course they're not interested in ever sending their own children, and they don't want to draft. They just want to send the poor schmucks who have to serve in the military to be able to go to college. So again, Michael Weimer, today is your hot seat, man. Sorry. This is it. You stepped in it. You're going to get punished here. No, how dare you be moralistic on my show? Let's move on though.
Yeah, real quick. We got some more Norwegian money. We need to obey our Norwegian overlords. Is Trump's fifth revolutionary aesthetics that could inspire a revolutionary movement within MAGA?
Great question. Yeah. And thank you again for is that a super chat?
Yeah. From
Norway. A Norwegian super chat, the best kind. So that's what I've been talking about, is I see the whole thing as not revolutionary. It's a Disneyland revolution. Not to say it's not real. I think what Trump did is real. It's, as I said, it's courageous for sure on a certain level, no doubt about it. But there's no revolution. He's not leading a revolution, nor will one commence from this. Again, they just took a shot at him. What has MAGA been doing since then? Since Saturday? Was it Saturday? Friday?
Well, I mean, they think they're going to actually win the election.
Sunday? What day was it? Was it Sunday?
It was Saturday, I believe. Saturday night.
Yeah. I don't even know where I was. See? No, but it's no, of course it's not a revolution, because the MAGA's never been revolutionary. As you've been saying, and I think you're dead right, like their political program is essentially fundamentally about renewing or strengthening or reviving, as they see it, old American institutions. So it is fundamentally conservative or reactionary in that way. So there's nothing revolutionary about it. But again, I just don't see any revolutionary courage in MAGA, and never have, except in Trump. I think Trump actually himself could certainly lead. I could see him leading some kind of armed revolution, like a real revolution, but no. His followers, he knows it too. They're not political people, actually. Most MAGA people weren't political before 2015.
Yeah.
Which is, again, to their credit, but it also means that they're sort of naive, and revolutionaries are people who have been political for a very long time, usually, and are very, very steeped in it and very sophisticated politically. Yeah. You kind of have to be sophisticated to be a revolutionary, because you kind of have to understand the whole system you're trying to overthrow.
But at least typically, revolutionaries are left wing, and when they're successful, they're incredibly bloody and overthrow a system and replace it with absolute chaos and mass killings. Like, that's usually what happens.
Oh yeah, no, we don't want a revolution.
Yeah.
By the way, let me make that clear. I guess I haven't made that clear yet. No, I'm not. This is not to say I'm sad that they're not revolutionaries. I'm glad they are not revolutionaries, because I don't want to see a civil war. I don't want any kind of civil war. I hate all violence of that kind. I pretty much hate all gun violence, I think, no matter what. So let's talk about another non-revolutionary aspect of Donald Trump. which is his choice of a running mate.
Real quick before we do that, TFTV gave us $1 of real money, so I just want to say thanks.
Is that not Norwegian?
Yeah, it's.
Oh, we'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Thanks, though. Yeah, I mean, here's yet another example of how Trump is totally not a revolutionary. Basically, I was thinking about inviting Michael Tracey on today, but maybe we'll do that next week. But he's
doing the best live coverage of the RNC right now, asking the best questions of these representatives. Yeah,
he's on the floor, like going with his mic to people who don't know he's Michael Tracey. That's the best thing.
Hey, Ted Cruz, you want 2 minutes for Rumble? Yeah,
exactly.
I'm with Rumble. That's who I am.
At Icarus Fest, he was telling me that when he would go to the NATO meeting and the G7 meeting and the BRICS meeting, and he would just show up and they wouldn't even know who he was. He'd get a press credential easily, and he ended up he said he was like in a room, like all of a sudden he's standing next to Modi, and Modi's like patting him on the chest and giving him advice about relationships or something, and he's like hanging out with Macron, and is wild. Tracy's wild. Anyway, I mean, this is the drum he's been banging, sometimes against my head, but he's fundamentally right, and this is why I've agreed with him, even though he doesn't understand that I agree with him. Yeah, they're not. Trump on foreign policy in particular, one could say, is pretty standard. Yes, he's rhetorically said some things that are somewhat radical, I would say, within the American foreign policy establishment, the tradition of it. Sure. And again, I've said this many times. He's the first major candidate, except for Ron Paul, I guess, to challenge NATO, to challenge the idea of regime change wars, to challenge the idea of the American empire without using that word. But in terms of policy, the military budget increased under Trump. He killed Soleimani, a terrible provocation against Iran, he basically ruined the Iran deal, also just ruined relations with Iran when they were actually getting better. And they did that because Bolton and Pompeo and company have wanted war with Iran. I mean, that's the reason I'm critical of those things. Mm-hmm. And the sanctions as well, is that it was done with the purpose, the intent of pushing Iran into war with the United States. So, I mean, very bad move. The provocations by moving the embassy to Jerusalem, the deals with Saudi Arabia, the Abraham Accords, cutting out the Palestinians to make these corrupt deals with these dictatorships. Yeah, I mean, he's not. And then also with China, sort of becoming more belligerent with China, ratcheting up, getting us closer to war with China, moving much of the Navy into the Pacific in a forward position in China, against China. Very bad stuff. So yeah, I mean, and now we got JD Vance, who is, I'd say, classic MAGA on foreign policy, which is to say he's been pretty good on Ukraine. Although I guess someone check me on this. I've heard that he's actually recently still said he supports Zelensky in Ukraine, but he has been the best critic of the Ukraine war in the Senate for sure. And is essentially I believe he's still for pulling all aid from Ukraine, I believe, which is a big deal.
Tracey has been asking these representatives who are supposedly anti-Ukraine and have been voting against funding in Ukraine and asking them why they did it. And the answers that they always give is, well, there's no plan for victory. It just seems like a perpetual war with no underlying actual victory plan. And so they parrot all the talking points about Putin being evil and how he shouldn't have done it. But they're just saying it's a dumb war. It's sort of like it's like Obama's criticism of the Iraq War. It's a dumb war. We should be. They're not against it in principle. They're just angry at how it's being executed.
I think Vance is better than that, though. Mm-hmm. I saw him give a speech to the Quincy Institute, which is the big anti-interventionist think tank in DC, and I've had a bunch of their people on my show. So Vance was there. He was at the Quincy Institute and gave a speech. Now, he did in the speech sort of like very clearly say, listen, I differ from you guys on Israel, Gaza. He sucks on Israel. He's pro-Israel. But his speech, as I recall, is mostly on Ukraine, and it was pretty solidly anti-interventionist and anti-Ukraine in this sense. And he's not anti-NATO. That's the problem. That's what I was getting to. So yes, Trump talked some good game against NATO during the campaign and even during his presidency to some extent. But look where we are. Ukraine grew during his presidency. I think they added 2 countries, something like that, 2 member states, at least 2. Montenegro. I mean, ridiculous stuff too. And Vance has the same position as far as I know. He's still for supporting Ukraine, staying in Ukraine. I mean, NATO, staying in NATO, Article 5, the whole thing. So, yeah, it's not a revolution. And there's no revolutionary aesthetics, back to the question in the super chat earlier. No. This is I would call Trump, within the sort of context of the American political tradition, I would call him a major reformer, or an attempt at major reform. That's what Trump and the Trump movement is, for sure. And major reform, but it's nothing revolutionary. There's no attempt to overturn any institution, any major portion of the US government or its governing structure. It's not even an attempt. I mean, yes, they want to purge the deep state, but the purge is that level. I mean, civil servants, they're not talking about purging, as far as I can tell, purging actual political leaders. That would be revolutionary as well. In every revolution, you've seen that, the purging of the opposition leaders. That's not, the deep state's not the leaders. These are the functionaries who carry out the policies of the opposition. So no, there's no aspect of it that's revolutionary, except I would say the cult of personality around Trump, which does resemble a lot of revolutionary movements. You see that kind of cult around almost all of them. Every communist and fascist movement I can think of had some central leader who had a cult-like culture around him. So, but Vance, yeah. It's a good thing, though. I mean, this to me, and I said this on Twitter. I mean, when Trump announced that it was Vance, I said, I guess this means the Ukraine war is over. I mean, I do think that. I haven't seen analysts say that yet, but I haven't been paying too much attention this week to that. But I would think that's what it means, don't you? Like, I think if I were Zelensky, I would see this as the end.
I think it means that the Republican Party is proposing to end the war in Ukraine should Trump get elected.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, but it's basically almost a foregone conclusion that he will get elected. So that's what I mean. Like, assuming he will get elected, this means it's over, I would think.
Yeah, I think that's their intention.
Yeah.
Now they could. Yeah.
Which is something else, because last I checked, and again, we haven't been paying as much attention to this since Gaza started, but last I checked, Ukraine had a solid majority among Republicans in Congress, right? I mean, yes, they did. They had a massive majority. In fact, Vance, who else besides Vance? There's only a handful of senators who were critical of Ukraine. Vance was just about the only one. So that the I don't understand why Trump did this. Except that he saw Vance as a strong candidate in every other way. But on Ukraine, I mean, he's bucking a major trend in the party itself by picking Vance. And I love this. I mean, this is one of my favorite Trump decisions, simply because of the Ukraine piece of it.
There's a rumor that this decision wasn't made until after he got shot. And yeah. So maybe he got radicalized against the deep state and said, you know what, if I'm really going to be in power and fight this thing, I better actually fight this thing and do something substantive. Also, JD Vance was like a favorite of Don Jr. Like, whenever I heard Don Jr. in public talk about who he wants to be VP, it would always be JD Vance. He'd always say JD Vance is the only guy in the Senate fighting for us. So
I'm just remembering when his book came out, my podcast was new too. And I know he was on the list of people I was going to invite on the show.
Oh, Hillbilly Elegy for
that book. I remember his name was on the list for quite a while, and that's when he was just an author of this book.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember if I actually did invite him. I don't think I did, because I finally realized it was not exact. As I said, it wasn't that unregistered. It was not. It was sort of, there was a conventional narrative in there and sort of conventional politics too.
Yeah, that poor whites need to clean up their act and stop using drugs. And
poor whites can act like blacks too.
Yeah,
see, we can act like blacks too. I mean, it's a very anti-racist book. That's good.
Are you concerned at all about the Peter Thiel connection with JD Vance and Peter Thiel with Palantir and him potentially being a deep state plant with that?
So, full disclosure, I have some friends who work for Peter Thiel. I have a good friend, a couple of decent friends, and a couple of acquaintances who work for him right here across the bay. I don't know what Peter Thiel's about. I don't understand the guy. It's a lot of it's mysterious. I don't even get inside intel from my friends about what he's up to. He's got all these different projects. I was trying to explain this to my son the other day. Like I all I see from Peter Thiel is what he produces publicly. I really don't know much about him personally. He does a lot of stuff. He has all these projects going on, many of which are great. Like he has philanthropies that are trying to change education he funds startups in education similar to Unregistered Academy. No, I have not received funding, but I mean, he does similar stuff to that. A lot of good stuff and a lot of sort of think tanky stuff, a lot of interesting things. But then, yes, I mean, Palantir is also part of his portfolio. I don't know exactly what he's doing with it now. Is he still part of Palantir?
I believe so. Yeah.
Is he? Okay. And that's Pierre Omidyar, who's the founder of The Intercept, also is Palantir, I'm pretty sure, which is an interesting thing because The Intercept is this big, touts itself. Glenn Greenwald founded it with Jeremy Scahill. So it touted itself as having that kind of politics. But their owner was the founder of Palantir, which has massive contracts with, I think, is it defense?
CIA for sure.
Yeah, intelligence. Yeah. So I don't know what that's about. I mean, Thiel supported Trump famously in 2016. So he's not averse to nationalism. He probably feels, I don't know what Thiel's feelings are about patriotism, the things we've been talking about, but I could see that. I could see him working for the CIA for that reason, that he sees it as sort of like, protecting the United States, national security, believes in it. Although that's odd because he comes from a pretty radical libertarian background. Thiel, I forget, he's not a Randian, right? Nor is he a Rothbardian, but he's some kind of he's Hoppian, isn't he? Like a Hoppe
I don't know about that, but I know he's called himself a libertarian in public a lot.
Oh no, he was originally hardcore, like the most hardcore libertarian in Silicon Valley, in fact. But really comes from an intellectual place too. He's not just like some retail libertarian. Like he really has done the reading, and I think he's even maybe taught some of it. But like from a very pure place, I believe he's a Hans Hermann Hoppe libertarian. Actually, I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I know that it's like a very like ANCAP, anarcho-capitalist, radical. So that's where I'm confused, right? Because last I checked, anarchists don't mess around with the CIA, and I don't know. He seems, whenever I hear him speak, he seems quite harmless. So I don't know. And so I don't know what that means. Vance, I mean, I know several people who get paid by Thiel and like they're public intellectuals. And that's probably in part what Thiel was doing with Vance. He's trying to change the discourse by funding public intellectuals. People on the right who are have a lot of sway on the right, get paid by Peter Thiel. That's fine. That's what I would do if I were a billionaire. I would probably do the same thing. I would finance public intellectuals who I liked. So, he's had wacky ideas about seasteading. Remember that? Remember Thiel's thing about seasteading?
That's like building a utopian thing. Yeah.
Building these platforms in the middle of the ocean and building cities on top of them. And all the libertarians would go live there on these platforms in the middle of the ocean. That was his big thing, which, when I saw that, I was like, wow, this is what libertarians dream about, huh? Living in the middle of the ocean all by themselves. Says something about the personality there.
Yeah. Those critical of JD Vance and his Palantir and Peter Thiel connection are alleging that this is in line with what Trump has said about wanting to strengthen the military at all Like, he's always talked about wanting to strengthen the military first and foremost. I think that's in the Republican platform now. That and you have the largest data collecting apparatus with Palantir. They used during the pandemic. They helped use health data to allocate relief aid to certain states. It's everything.
Yeah, that's not good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's consistent with Trump and especially his foreign policy leanings in terms of actual policy. Yeah, of course. I mean, he's not anti-CIA. He wants to remove the bad people from the CIA. In fact, I think he has said that CIA staff like him. I think it's just the leadership he thinks that are against him. But, he's all for having a private army. Which is what the CIA is. It's the president's private army. And this is horrible. I didn't know this, that he's calling for a stronger military, although of course that's not surprising and consistent with everything he said so far. I mean, Vance served in Iraq and Afghanistan, I think, right?
Yeah. Although I believe he was just a photographer, but he is a Marine, but yeah.
Oh, really? He was just a photographer? A Marine photographer?
Yeah.
I didn't know you could do that.
I don't think he really did combat. Yeah.
You could be a Marine and just be a photographer?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
That seems like stolen valor to me. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Do you really get to say you were a Marine in Iraq if you just took pictures? I guess if you're on the front line, I suppose, Yeah, so that's sad. The American empire is apparently not going anywhere. For a moment there in 2015 and 2016, I thought Trump's talk about NATO and against regime change wars and all that was sort of the beginning of the end of the empire. I didn't think he was going to bring home all the troops and close down all the bases, but I did think it was the beginning of the conversation of the discourse had begun about unwinding the American empire. But that's not what we got. We have, I think, just as many, maybe even more bases now than we did then. In fact, I think we do because they reopened the two huge ones in the Philippines, Subic Bay and Clark Air Base in the Philippines, to fight China. They just reopened those this year or last year. Those were kind of the cornerstones of the Cold War in the Pacific, and they closed them, I think, in the 90s under Clinton, and then they just reopened them under Biden. But yeah, I mean, so
sorry,
we have even more. Go ahead.
I looked it up. He was a public affairs specialist with in the Marines.
I mean, that could mean he just did press, right? That's what that means.
I think so. Yeah.
PR press. Yeah. Good for him. Good. So, would I accept Teal money? And someone says PayPal. Yeah, I'd accept PayPal as payment. I mean, the whole company.
Yeah.
And then I would just sell it right away. Not a great company.
And yeah, Teal offered a military contract. He tried to sell PayPal as like a financial surveillance thing to the CIA, and
yeah. Has anyone talked to him about that? I mean, asked him that in public, like what that was about? I've never heard of that. Has Teal ever answered for that in public? I don't think so. Someone needs to interview him and bring that up and say, yo, you're supposed to be an anarchist, a libertarian, anti-statist, skeptical of government, but you're working for the CIA with the CIA, doing big projects for the CIA, not just some little side thing. How do you reconcile that, Peter? Someone needs to please, again, spread this, after the Trump speech. Can people go out and talk to Peter Thiel somehow? Or his minions? He needs to answer for that. I want an explanation. That's all. I don't want to take torches and pitchforks to his house. I just want to know how he reconciles that. I'm interested intellectually how he does that.
Yeah. And then Elon Musk, also a PayPal co-founder or whatever, fully endorsed Donald Trump, finally went out and officially endorsed him and is committing $45 million to a super PAC, $45 million a month, I believe, to a super PAC for Donald Trump. And then you have David Sachs speaking at the RNC. And so you have huge billionaire public figures that, 4 or 8 years ago, it was too toxic to overtly say that you were pro-Trump, now being entirely behind Trump.
Yeah, and a lot of that was immediately after the assassination attempt. Right. Musk announced that stuff like minutes after the shot, right?
Yeah.
And some again, there's cult of personality behavior.
Well,
right there.
I think
Sachs too. Yeah. David Sachs was acting like a cult of personality guy, just worshiping.
Yeah. Scott Adams is calling it a fake reason. Like these people had already justified in their minds supporting Trump, but now the assassination happens, and that's a good enough reason for them to they feel safe now after the assassination to publicly support him.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. Yeah, yeah. People like David Sachs have a whole leg inside the establishment while they're trying to be dissidents, and so you can see in him and them like a real reluctance to like fully merge with Trump, but they want to do it because they know what's going to happen because he lives in San Francisco and whatever, he's in the media, Silicon Valley. But yeah, this right. That's a good analysis by Adams. It does give them what is that? It gives them permission in a sense to side with him, to openly side with Trump. Now Trump for the first time is a sympathetic figure.
Yeah.
For the first, we had to take a piece of his ear off to make him sympathetic, but we did. We, meaning the establishment, has now finally made Trump sympathetic to the broad population.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And isn't this again like some sort of divine providence that every sort of attempt to take him down only strengthens him in the public eye, that they all ridiculously backfire, and it's almost as if he has a guardian angel around him protecting him, or that he has some divine wind behind him.
How many women in red, white, and blue who sleep in red, white, and blue sheets are having sex dreams about Trump right now? You know, remember Obama? You were too young. You weren't even born then.
No, I remember.
Do you remember the sex dreams that white women were having about Obama?
Yeah, yeah.
It was like a thing. There were articles written about it. It was a phenomenon. Lots of white women were having sex dreams about Obama. I'm just wondering, I mean, man, you can't be more alpha than what Trump just did. Shit. Turns him on. Maybe it doesn't. Again, we need to get to the bottom of that. If it doesn't turn women on, again, let's not see it as a virtue, guys. How about that?
Well,
courage is overrated, is what I'm trying to say here.
Henry Kissinger, power is the greatest aphrodisiac.
Well, I know that's what I'm getting at. Yeah. Unfortunate. It's a damn shame too. It's just, it's true, but it's a real problem. I wish it weren't such an aphrodisiac, especially for women.
So,
all right. Yeah. No dead babies. See, look what happens. We stopped talking about Gaza.
Oh, I think Gaza is a foregone conclusion. I think that war continuing is a foregone conclusion. I think, yeah.
I mean, you certainly could be right. And just to think that is just astonishing, given that the last week was one of the worst weeks so far. There were 2 or 3 massacres involving more than 50 people in each one. I think one was like 100 something, the other was like 50 something. And you can see too, it's like massive bombings of residential, like in the tent cities and residential areas. It's obvious that lots of people died. And of course, the body parts all over the street and children with their heads blown off. It's tremendous fun. The idea of continuing this another 2, 3, 4, 5 months or a year or two, I mean, in a sense, it's been going on. Well, you could say for 100 years, you could say for 76 years, you could say for Gaza specifically, the siege of Gaza, which is what this is, began 16 years ago. I mean, they started bombing this exactly this way 16 years ago. They've had 7 or 8 bombing campaigns in Gaza since then. So it's not new, but it's just, so in a sense, yeah, it's always been indefinite, right? The Israel-Palestine war has never stopped. And that was the whole problem with Zionism in the first place. That's why smart people said, hey, not a good idea. You're going to be at war forever if you do that.
Oh, let me see if I can find. Did you see on the RNC stage? I really don't want to mispronounce his name because I believe it's Shabbos Katzenbaum, the lawyer who is suing Harvard for anti-Semitism.
He's not Norwegian. He's
not Norwegian. Somebody might know the origins of that name in the chat. Shabbos. I'm not sure. Might be Brazilian. Yeah. Shabbos Katzenbaum spoke on the stage of the RNC to raucous applause. And this is a lifelong Democrat, somebody who I believe still intends to vote Democrat in the fall. And but yeah, he's harking on about the threat of anti-Semitism on college campuses and suing Harvard for anti-Semitism. And because of that, raucous applause from the RNC. And it's complete universal lockstep on this issue.
It's the retarded National Convention. I mean, it's just that stuff, these claims about anti-Semitism at Ivy League universities, it's the bottom to me. There's nothing, you can't get dumber than that. It's just, that's the dumbest thing in American politics. And the most fraudulent, the most outrageous, the most offensive to me. You know, my son, who is totally Jewish, just graduated from an elite university. So I know of what I speak. And of course, I taught at them for decades, being also technically Jewish myself. It's just, it's how wow. How people entertain that for even a second just boggles them. Sam Harris just devoted an entire podcast. What a genius, to this very thesis that anti-Semitism or anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And Sam is just like, well, I know technically, you know, it's technically there are differences between the two. But what does he say? He always says, it would be delusional to think that nowadays they aren't one and the same. Delusional. He always uses synonyms for crazy to as an argument against his opponents. It's just offensive. I mean, intellectually, wow. Americans really are the dumbest, most naive people on earth. And that, by the way, is, you know, 3/4 of Congress, I guess, is what we're talking about, since they voted for that incredible bill equating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. I'm not allowed, essentially, to be critical of the state of Zionism, a political ideology. We are not allowed culturally and now legally to some extent to be opposed to Zionism, to a political ideology. I've just never heard of such a thing. It's just the most outrageous thing I've ever heard of in my life in American politics, even though it's not terribly consequential. No one's going to go to jail for being an anti-Zionist. I'm not saying that, but it's just, wow, it hits me. I am so offended profoundly by this, the intellectual dishonesty of it and the assault on civil liberties and free speech in the service of a foreign apartheid nation. The whole package is just something else. But Shabbos, go for it, bro. And you Republicans, again, this is why, this is one of many reasons I will never, ever vote for either one of the major parties. Shabbos, cats and mom.
And people have been...
He's a fake Jew. It's not even like, Jews are intelligent, inquisitive. I mean, generally speaking, that's what Jews are known for. Being intellectual, curious, relatively open-minded. If you think about all the great radical thinkers, most of them are Jewish. They're not cowards like this. This is cowardice. This is intellectual cowardice of the highest order, right? You were trying to make it illegal for people to criticize your feelings. I mean, it's something else, man. Yeah, Jews are not like that. The Jews I've known are free thinkers relatively. I mean, as a group, sure, that's who they've been. Not these fucks, not Israelis, not Zionists, and especially these American Zionists. They're worse than Israelis are. They're absolutely authoritarian, and they're idiots, and they're cowards, and they want to silence us and me. And it's just by making this absolute trick of a claim that a political ideology is, to be opposed to a political ideology is racist. Wowza.
Shout out again to Michael Tracey on the RNC floor. He's asking people or representatives about that particular bill. And I think he's giving like a masterclass to like asking substantive questions without being like adversarial or rude about it. And he just, every time they're like, yeah, Donald Trump led the way on that. That passed 320 to 91. This is something great that we're doing. This is, and then like Trump and Michael Tracey just gives this like little grin to the camera every time. Is like, see, I told you so. This is what I've been telling you guys. They're actually up to this whole time.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Tracey's great. Yeah, everybody, I strongly recommend following Tracey closely, especially right now during the conventions. Man, the Democratic convention in Chicago. I'm thinking about maybe going out to Chicago for it, just to be there. Just to be there. I'm not sure yet. I don't know. We'll see. But like
Oh, and in that respect, the rumor is the New York Post and New York Times are leaking this, that Biden is now open to dropping out, and that it's expected that he'll announce Sunday that he'll drop out.
I saw that.
Yeah. So we'll have an open convention.
Oh, right. So quoting someone, I think close to him, and that person said something like, I hope he does the right thing.
Yeah.
Which tells me that Joe's like, they're trying to take the car keys from him.
Yeah.
And he's refusing.
Yeah.
He's sitting on his car keys. He's hid them. You know, that's what he's doing. There's like open fighting like within the family about this, I think. I gotta think. I mean, Jill, none of them can want this for him.
And to put another quarter in the Alex Jones was right jar, today he has COVID. So now he has a medical emergency to keep him away from the spotlight while he's being pestered by, Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama are meeting with him in person while he has COVID to try to convince him not to run. But now he has the medical emergency excuse to drop out. So that might
I'm still amazed, and I said this last week, I'm still amazed that how many liberals truly did not know how declined he was. Like they really weren't aware of how bad he was because of the censorship, basically, on all the liberal channels. They wouldn't show it. They wouldn't show him falling and stumbling and mumbling and falling asleep and all the rest of it. Liberals they're so siloed. I didn't know this. I didn't know they were that siloed off. They were really shocked. I saw like very prominent liberals, like in the media, New York Times, New Yorker, The Atlantic, all that big liberal, like just being like, what the hell's going on with Joe Biden? I'm like, we've known this for years, guys. It's amazing. The arrogance and ignorance of power, of those in power. They don't need to know. They don't need to follow other media because they run stuff. Because they run the universities and the newspapers and the government. They don't need to follow the opposition, I guess.
Yeah.
Wild to me. But yeah, I kind of want him to. I want him to keep going. Don't you?
Same. Yeah, I want him to keep going. Yeah.
Let's go all the way, man. Let's go all the way.
I want to see the naked emperor for another 6 months. Yeah.
I want to go all the way to where there's just a bed at his press conferences and he just lies down on the bed. And he naps during the press conference. Just let's go. Let's go all the way, Joe. You really want this? I want to see you do 4.5 more years of this. I want to see how you're doing at the end of your second term. I'm dying to see what that looks like. I really am. Can you imagine?
Man, these Democrats are like Don King, like telling Muhammad Ali, yeah, you can fight Larry Holmes one more time. Like, go for it. You're the champ.
Sure. He's really, I mean, as I said, I observed him when I was a little intern in Washington on Capitol Hill in 1988. And I remember thinking at the time, this guy's a car salesman. He just had that whole vibe about him, like more than other Congress people. I saw him he was always like hustling and like having these little side meetings in the halls with people. And just like he always had this vibe. He was just like pushing and hustling and selling and selling. And so he's just all about it. He's just been a politician since 1970. And that's all he's done. And he's not going to give up. He got the big prize and he's not going to give it up, man. He's also delusional. He doesn't see what's going on because he's so fried in the brain, I guess.
Yeah.
Something else.
But I mean, the prospect of an open convention is very exciting, and that would be worth going to Chicago for.
68 all over again. It's amazing how we're rerunning 68.
Yeah.
Like middle of a war, huge protests against the Democratic Party going on, open convention or convention fights at least. Like, whoa, this is going to be awesome. I think we should go. I'm hoping for riots, peaceful riots, of course, but I want riots in the street. We got to go full 68, guys. Though, I'm not actually calling for that, but that the left it's almost guaranteed there's going to be riots at this thing.
Oh, at the Democratic convention?
Yeah, Chicago, because of the left.
Because left, because they're in power in Palestine. Yeah.
Palestine, the whole thing. Yeah, but like there's so much energy, they know they can do it. And that's, yes, it's true. The left likes riots. They do. And they're good at them, and they've done them often. And I don't see how it doesn't happen. And also there's a strong LARPing vibe in all political movements, especially the American left. So they're going to know about 68 for sure. And the left is very reverential toward the 60s, all the 60s radicals, right? They were all great and wonderful, and we should emulate them. And so there will be street violence for sure in Chicago. I can guarantee it. But I kind of like it this time.
One more question.
Good cause. Yeah.
One more question that I wish we had more time to talk about, but with the Trump shooting, do you believe in stochastic terrorism? Do you believe that that there is a climate of violence in rhetoric that leads to the unsafety of certain people? That there's a certain responsibility that people have when speaking in public to not dehumanize others and create rhetoric that will lead to violence?
You asked this with 1 minute to go.
Yeah.
It's a huge topic that we should talk about maybe next week, because I have a lot to say. It's a very tricky and nuanced, as you might imagine, at least in my mind.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of on both sides of that question. Quickly, my thing about that is, yes, words are violent in a sense, but in a real sense, have you ever been hurt by words spoken to you? Yes, of course. And is that pain even worse than some physical pain you felt? Yes, of course, right? The worst pain we felt is psychological pain. Okay. But it is also, I like to treat it as fundamentally different than physical violence and pain in such things as law. So the left wants to say there's stochastic terror and people are like, there's violence in words, and therefore we need laws controlling words. And I say, no, we're going to have to seal off the psychological pain as a separate thing that we don't have jurisdiction over. But we certainly should have laws against, I think, or rules at least, against physical terror, physical violence, and the pain it incurs. So I guess, that's where I am on it, but the left is right analytically, I think, in calling it terror, in calling it pain, and calling it violence. Words, yeah, but it's a fundamentally different kind. I'd like to make it fundamentally different and treat it as fundamentally different and extra legal. It should be outside the legal system. It should not be relevant to law. It should not be relevant to law. And that's just a choice. I don't actually have an argument for why. I just think it's a better way to live. Because if we did allow the state to have jurisdiction over our feelings, then we're really talking about totalitarianism. The state, we would then be giving the state permission to regulate our inner feelings, our inner thoughts, right? If stochastic terrorism, psychological violence is this under the state's purview and jurisdiction, then the state has the right to monitor and regulate what is inside of our heads. Bad move. So that's my take.
Yeah, and then we didn't get the chance to go over the right-wing cancel culture happening now.
Libs of TikTok. Yeah. I hope this takes her down. I don't think it will, but I just, God, I'm waiting for the day when Kaya Ratchik goes away. She's been getting Home Depot workers fired for being happy about or saying they wish that Trump had been killed. And it was a Home Depot worker, cashier at Home Depot, and then there was another guy, a firefighter somewhere who got fired.
Yeah, because he said post.
For it was 5-word post on Facebook about how he wished the guy had not missed or something. And Ratchik has that kind of power. She got them both fired. Amazing. Go after power, woman. Why don't you do that instead? I would love for you to get people with actual power fired. do that instead of going after teachers and Home Depot cashiers and firefighters. She's disgusting and stupid, and I really wish she would go away. All right. Go to Unreported. Oh, go, sorry. What?
Oh, yeah, after show. Patreon.com/unregistered, right?
Patreon.com/unregistered. Become a patron of this show. There, $5 a month, and you can join us at the after show, the after party. It's a Zoom meeting right now, starting right now. Michael and I go and hang out for an hour and a half after Unreported every Thursday night and have a great time. I love it. It's the highlight of my week. And there have been people coming to Thursday nights for now. I think it's 5 years now we've been doing this. So it's pretty cool. Go there, patreon.com/unregistered. Support the show anyway. And it's $5 a month, guys.
And we have the Jack Mason,
oh my God,
Anna Kachian panel on The Exorcist live from Icarus Fest.
Yeah, there. it's a right now it's only available to patrons of the show. Is that episode? We just released it. Anna Kachian of Red Scare and Jack Mason of the Perfume Nationalist and me at Icarus Fest talking about The Exorcist, but really talking about American culture and politics for about 2 hours with an amazing audience too. Tremendous episode. It was the highlight of the whole festival for me. So you get that, you get access to that episode if you become a patron. Well worth it.
Yeah.
All right.
And that was the first time they were sharing the stage publicly, I think.
That's right.
On a panel like that. So
yeah, it's amazing. Yeah,
big deal.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Yep. Strongly recommend it. All right, dude, we got to run.
Yep. We're out.
Peace.
Cool. Peace. Play my music.